Hey everyone, Sari here, and welcome back to another week of late season offense matches. Guinivere and Zelgius got to sweep the week again this season after a highly successful debut last time. Guinivere is a surprisingly resilient ranged specialist, taking advantage of a Brave Dimitri-style damage reduction combo to offset her low physical defense. She also has access to both on-hit and post-combat healing, letting her sustain herself through multiple combats. I also experimented with Miracle as her special this week. The combination of slaying and breath effects makes it easy for her to charge it, while her various sources of healing can let her use it multiple times in a single turn if necessary. Zelgius is a great melee bodyguard for Guinivere and really appreciates her donated post-combat healing. His weapon gives him a significant speed advantage over his opponents, along with null follow-up and some first-hit damage reduction. Combining Black Luna with Special Fighter gives him lethal counterattack potential and self-healing, while his other skills focus on boosting his attack and speed as much as possible. Ideal ends up being a better option than Bond or Unity for him thanks to Peony, whose stance lets him neutralize penalties. I did give this team 2 slots this week, letting Guinivere have the option of using either a solo seal or null follow-up. While null follow-up is usually a more useful skill, the extra stats can sometimes make the difference in speed checks. The support team is mostly the same as usual, only rotating Shamir into the squad as the week's bonus unit. Most of their skills are focused on tipping stat matchups in the team's favor, including Sabotage's, Peony and Milla's cross-map combat stats, and Shamir's Panic and Discord. Ash and Peony also offer a lot of mobility support for the team, while Milla's isolation really helps to control the battlefield. Now that we've gone over the team, let's get to the first match. This map was a fun one to see early in the week. It's a double-note Cataline, which I don't see too many of anymore. It works by using the Tooth Pathfinders to threaten as much of the map as possible, and try to overload any enemy Farsavers, or just sneak in and pick off a unit that isn't being protected by one. It can still be very effective, especially with this plus 10 Leaf and plus 10 Fire Sweep Python leading the charge. The two of them offer a great 1-2 punch to try to tackle the weak points of any ranged unit that they're fighting against, especially when they're being backed up by an Air, Happy, and Lysithea. Air especially can also be very hard to deal with thanks to that miracle effect. While Lysithea handles any slower units, and Happy just tries to overload with her pre-charged Glimmer.
Command me.
Unfortunately for all of them, Guinevere is a very strong ranged specialist, and we move in on the first turn with Guinevere just sitting up front and protect her with Zelgius to keep her safe from the note. Leaf goes in first and can do a solid chunk of damage, but even with that unmitigated second hit, Quinn's still bulky enough to survive him and wipe him out on counterattacks. Note moves in next and, well, he gets a bit demolished by Zelgius before the rest of the ranged squad moves in. Air can do some damage, but it gets mitigated very well by the damage reduction combo, and with Miracle backing her up, Gwyn isn't threatened at all anymore. Not even by a pre-charged special from Lysithea. And with Lysithea doing absolutely no damage, well, the other two members of her team aren't going to do much more. And then we close the turn out with Python. With most of the team down, it's just a matter of making sure we pick up these Aether Pots before we close the match out.
Lord Asker, guide us. Ready.
And with only Note to navigate around, it's not too hard to do that. We can actually pick one Aether Pot up this turn just by using it to help Guinevere warp forwards and pick it up. And with everybody out of range, we don't have to worry about note this turn. So we just reposition Guinevere over,
Lord Asker guide us. Good morning.
and dance sash forward to let her grab our second Aether pot,
Be cautious.
for letting Zelgius move in and close out the match. This map was an interesting one to navigate, even without merges on the enemy team, mostly thanks to this bonus week Shamir. Shamir is a dangerous unit to try to tank. Panic and Discord are tricky to fight through, and she applies some heavy speed and defense penalties based on her opponent's combined total of bonuses and penalties. She gets a tidy chunk of damage reduction for the first hit she takes, then uses her speed, guaranteed follow-up, flow effect, and null guard to demolish her opponent on the second shot. Fatal Smoke is just the annoying cherry on that cake. I end up taking a turn to set up for this. I need to make sure that I'm not going to be giving either Guinevere or Zelgius bonuses from Peony, since I want to make sure that the Bright Shrine doesn't land on Zelgius, giving him a much easier time carving through the enemy emblem. I also want to make sure that Guinevere isn't getting the Formation or Null penalties bonuses from Peony, because all it's really doing here is giving Shamir an extra 8 attack and speed. Once we have everything in position and have our own Discord and Panic applied to the enemy team, it's time to go. Emblem moves in first, and Zelgius can tank and finish her off, thanks to avoiding that maxed out Bright Shrine. Dagger moves in next, but really doesn't get to punch through Guinevere, who just gets to charge up Miracle, giving her a very safe remainder of this enemy phase. Shamir moves in next. Can't outspeed Gwyn, and thanks to null follow-up, can't get a guaranteed follow-up for that second hit. And while we don't get to heal at all through this combat, there aren't any other ranged opponents who are going to reach Guinevere this turn.
Truly?
From here it becomes a lot simpler. While Hector is a bit of an annoyance, meaning we can't just take out this Yune, Yune is also not going to get to do much to Guinevere, and it's pretty safe for us to just stay in place and tank up the rest of this turn. Without Shamir on the table, we can start using Peony's bonuses again, and while Yune can do a chunk of visible damage, thanks to being able to take advantage of the penalties on nearby allies, it's nothing that's going to threaten Guinevere, who one-shots her on the counterattack, before Zelgius gets to take Furon down.
Are you the praying type?
And then move on to Hector after he gets danced.
The night is still.
From here it's a pretty straightforward clear, since Fire doesn't have a weapon equipped. It's just about getting to this second Aether pot.
Good morning.
And then navigating past this heavy trap to let Guinevere jump forward and close out the match. This match was a neat one to run into. It's not too often that you see a Mikado on defense teams. I do think she offers a solid bit of utility for defense, including a dazzling flash staff with a built-in Kanto control, and being able to use odd recovery can help avoid the team being slowed down by debuffs. Cordelia functions a lot the same way that Catria will, although it can be a bit harder for the defense to work around dual strike instead of triangle attack. And having two dancers is a good way to make sure that they don't just get shut down by Milla's isolation.
I bestow my blessing.
Ready.
We take a turn here just to get set up, I'm not too worried about the flash since Guinevere has Nulsi
Good
Disrupt,
morning.
and I was actually hoping to set up so that Volk would get to use a dual strike for lethality, since from what I calculated, Guinevere would be able to survive
I will
that.
not lose my way. Ready.
Unfortunately, I end up taking advantage of the dual strike blind spot here.
Cautious.
Triandra isn't actually in range of Cordelia, so she doesn't have the buff, and dual strike does require both allies to have that buff active on them to get the double hits, which means that Gwen really doesn't have any problems just shrugging off all of the ranged threats on their team. Mikado attacks first because of the flash effect that will get applied even if she gets knocked out here. But thanks to Nulsi Disrupt, Gwen doesn't really mind and can move right on and continue demolishing the enemy team. Unit does get to do some damage here, mostly just because of Zelgius being in range to donate some penalties, and Peony too. But it's not enough to slow Guinevere down. And with Triandra isolated, and staying isolated because it's the second turn, she just moves in to attack Gwyn. And Volk moves in last. And there, nobody else can reach us, so it's pretty easy to start cleaning things up.
Command me.
Good morning.
I'm mostly doing this just by moving Guinevere over and
At your request.
knocking out Azura to shut down any dances, which also puts her in range to bait out Cordelia. Baiting Cordelia here is pretty important since she does have Odd Tempest, which can make it a little bit tricky to actually
At once.
keep her from running around the map. In this case, Odd Tempest is actually just going to get her killed when she runs in to attack Guinevere and gets swatted by Zelgius instead. And now that we're just down to note, we can actually let Guinevere tank her while we run around and pick up the Aether Pots before we close things out.
Truly?
Even if Guinevere can't counterattack, that's
Ready.
actually a good thing for us here,
I do not
since it
object.
means that Note will attack her instead of going after anyone who's being protected by Zelgius. And she really can't get much damage done. So from there we can just continue moving forwards,
Maybe this way.
using Ash and Peony for some mobility to let us get all the way up towards this Aether Pot.
At once.
Can't quite get there this turn,
No dawdling.
and I do need to move Guinevere over a tile just to make sure that she doesn't get saved from the opposite side of Note. And from there it's an easy step forward for Milla, before Zelgius moves forward and closes out the match.
For the holiday.
This is another interesting map. It's a bit of an Infantry Pulse style setup, even if the Infantry Pulse skill isn't anywhere on the team. Duo Asker works in a very similar way. Opened Domain doesn't have any movement type restrictions either, so it lets him support threats like Ascended Air. This air in particular was a bit of a pain point when I was trying to figure out how to approach this. Pulse Speed Def and Seafeud give her a very solid advantage against colorless opponents like Guinevere, and for a little bit I wasn't sure if I'd be able to use this team to clear the map. I did end up figuring out a way to approach this though, and do end up needing to take a turn to set things up.
Be cautious.
Like this.
Part of that's because I want to make sure I'm applying Discord and Panic to the correct enemies,
Ready.
but the other part is that I want to get rid of this Panic mana before the enemy phase. While the Panicked stats aren't going to do very much with Peony's ability to suppress debuffs, at least against air, having those
I will
buffs
not
active
lose my
is
way.
going to be very helpful when she also has to tank the Dioasker and the
Good morning.
Ophelia afterwards.
As
So,
you
with a bit of
request.
help from Ash, we
I bestow my blessing.
test this Hex Trap and
Truly?
get Peony back out of the way. And say go. Air moves in first, as expected,
What is to come?
and thankfully we can just barely outspeed her, which lets Guinevere knock her out on the second hit, which fully charges her in Miracle. From there, Asker uses a Harsh Command and gets danced, but the Harsh Command doesn't do too much while Ophelia is panicked,
Vibrant energy bursts forth.
and while this Iceberg can do some damage to Guinevere thanks to Piercing Nulsi Disrupt, it's still not quite enough to actually trigger a Miracle. And, well, if Ophelia can't finish Gwyn off, Gwyn is going to happily finish her off instead. Asker, well, even after clearing off his debuffs, he can't get much done here. Which lets Gwyn start happily healing back towards full health.
I will not lose my way.
From here it's mostly just about clearing fields to make sure we don't have to worry too much about anything in the coming turns. After using a near save skill instead of far save means that we can do that with Guinevere, and she can knock out Embla without too many problems, before getting
Maybe
danced and
this
moving
way.
over to take out Triandra.
Be cautious.
Without the Dancer or Embla, there's not too much left to threaten us on this team. And with a little bit of help from Ash, we can also get Zelgius all the way over to the other side of the
It
wall
will be done.
to back up Guinevere and
Isn't
take
this
down
nice?
Medius in the next enemy phase.
The night is still.
Even with the damage reduction, Black Luna does still hit pretty hard.
As you request.
And now that it's down to just Hector, it's easy to just move Guinevere forward,
Ready.
pick up one of the Aether Pots, and get Zelgius to keep her safe from Hector next turn.
I bestow my
Grab a
blessing.
second Aether Pot with Shamir, and let Zelgius almost close things out. When I was doing this, I actually expected him to just take down Hector, even through Pavis, but I had forgotten that he was also using Deflect Melee, which means that he does get to survive that enemy phase.
Lord Asker, guide us.
So we just move him forward and let him take Hector out with a second Black Luna.
The night is still.
This match was a great way to close out the week. It's actually a rematch with one of the people on my friends list, and they brought some really impressive units on their team, including a pair of maxed out safe bodyguards in Valentine's Hana and Winter Annette. Those two are backed up by a lot of ranged firepower from the bonus week Summer Shamir, and the maxed out Summer Emir. This Emir is really tricky to deal with. Her first hit damage reduction and massive attack penalty combos well with her C-Skill's Miracle, making it very hard to knock her out in one round of combat, and taking 2 icebergs from her is a tall order from any tank. That Miracle effect also makes her allies, like Shamir and Asker, a lot harder to deal with, especially when Eldigan is offering all of them extra mobility with Soaring Guidance.
I
I ended up approaching this in a similar way to the earlier Shamir match. By not using Peony's Dance, we limit the effects of Shamir's weapon, and Panic doesn't do much if Guinevere doesn't have visible bonuses to flip. Positioning Ash and Peony nearby is important, since it gives Guinevere just enough attack to push Emir below 75% of her health on this first hit. And when she's below 75%, she doesn't have her Miracle online, and Guinevere can finish her off with the second hit. This also gets Miracle fully charged, which is a good thing, since she now has to go into tank Shamir without getting any healing. And while we did set things up for her to outspeed Shamir, the next thing that happens is that Eldigan moves over to dance for Asker, who moves in to throw a bonfire in Guinevere's face.
I care not.
Which is where this miracle finally gets to pay off. With Miracle active, Asker can't punch through Gwyn, and Gwyn gets to go in and one-shot Asker for his trouble, and sit at a very comfortable 15 hit points at the end of that turn. From here, most of the threat is out of the way, but these two armors can't really be taken too lightly.
Isn't this nice?
So we move Guinevere over to make sure we're tanking them off of the defense tile, and ideally also getting Medius in the bargain. And let Zelgius jump all the way over Peony, swap forwards, and keep her safe. Medius moves in first, he has less health to lose, and he's also not too threatening as an attacking unit on this team. He's mostly here just to enable the Ymir and Asker with Infantry Pulse to turn on the Bonfire and Iceberg. Net, though, would be a little tricky to actually take out in one round of combat if she had access to that defense tile. Without it, though, Guinevere can handle her and knock her out. And now that it's just down to Eldigan and Hana, it's not too hard to let Zelgius handle things. Ash lets him jump over the wall and pick up our first Aether Pod, and we can start moving over towards the second one, while just baiting out Eldigan for this turn. A lot like Medius, Eldigan isn't really built for attacking into a tank, so Zelgius doesn't really have any problems handling him. And then from there, just takes a smite
Isn't this nice?
for Shamir to get in range of the Aether Fountain,
As you request.
and we move Guinevere forward
This way.
to let Zelgius enemy face Hana and close out the match.
The night is still.
This was another fun week of matches, and the rematch at the end was a great way to close things out. Miracle ended up being an excellent experiment for Guinevere, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else she and Zelgius can do in water seasons to come. I do have a Discord channel if you'd like to hang out and chat. There's a link in the description, and I've also got a Patreon link there if you'd like to help support the channel. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video, good luck with your own matches, and I'll see you next time.